If I asked you what the language of Mexico was, you would probably say Spanish, and you wouldn't be wrong, because Spanish is the most widely spoken language of Mexico, but it's not the only one. 68 national languages are recognized by the Mexican government, including 63 indigenous languages. The most widely spoken indigenous language is náhuatl, or
náhuatl.
I'll explain this consonant represented by TL in a minute. Náhuatl is a member of the Uto-Aztecan language family, which has languages spoken in Mexico and the western United States. There are many dialects or varieties of Náhuatl, and they are often considered distinct languages that form a branch of Uto-Aztecan, the Nahuatl branch. When you see information about Náhuatl online or in books, it's usually classical Náhuatl, which was spoken by the Aztec or Mexica people around the 13th century when they migrated southward to central Mexico, and some of them as far south as Nicaragua. Then in the 15th century, they established the Aztec Empire based in Tenochtitlan, present-day Mexico City. And with the expansion of their empire came the expansion of the Náhuatl language. Classical Náhuatl is no longer spoken or used in writing, but various varieties of modern Náhuatl developed from it. You could say it's similar to how the modern Romance languages developed from Latin. Náhuatl can be divided into 4 dialect groups: Central and Northern, Western, and Eastern. One feature that distinguishes these dialects is the pronunciation of the phoneme represented in writing by TL. In Central and Northern Náhuatl, it retains its classical sound, k, so the name of the language is pronounced Náhuatl. This is a consonant not found in English or Spanish, or most other languages, a voiceless alveolar lateral affricate. You make this sound by positioning your tongue as though you are making an L sound, but you block the airflow, then release some constricted airflow over the sides of your tongue. In Eastern Náhuatl, it has come to be pronounced T, so the name of the language is pronounced Náhuatl. In Western Náhuatl, it has come to be pronounced L, so the name of the language is pronounced Náhuatl. The degree of mutual intelligibility is low between some varieties, while varieties geographically close to each other tend to have high mutual intelligibility. The modern variety that we'll focus on in this video is Orizaba Nahuatl, spoken in the mountainous Sierra de Zongolica area south of the town of Orizaba. This variety has features of both Central Nahuatl and Eastern Nahuatl. This phoneme is pronounced k, like in Central Nahuatl. Phonology. Nahuatl has 4 vowel phonemes, with short and long equivalents of each, a, e, I, o. Though in Orizaba Nahuatl, this short-long distinction has to a large extent been lost. Also note that the O phoneme has an allophonic variant that is more like U. The W phoneme is pronounced as W in some localities and V in others, which you might expect to be written as V. So Orizaba Nahuatl often prefers the W spelling over HU, because HU is too far removed from the letter V, which better represents the V pronunciation. The letter X represents the consonant sh, which normally isn't used in Spanish. There are no voiced stops, b, d, or g. There's also no f, y, ny, r, or z. Nahuatl has a consonant called
saltillo,
which comes after vowels at the ends of words, for instance. In some varieties, and in classical Nahuatl, it's a glottal stop, but in Orizaba Nahuatl, it's normally pronounced h. Some consonants are represented by digraphs, ch, ts, qu, and k, which you're familiar with by now. You'll often notice this particular consonant digraph at the end of nouns, since it functions as the most common absolutive suffix. A singular noun in Nahuatl has an absolutive form when it's not in a possessive form and not part of a compound noun. For example, the word for man.
tlacatl,
The base word is
tlaca,
and it's in the absolutive form. It's also at the end of the language's name.
náhuatl,
The base word is
náhuatl.
Basic grammar. A sentence in Nahuatl can consist of a single word, a verb with its prefixes and suffixes. Noun phrases and all independent pronouns can be absent. For example,
onijimita,
this word means I saw them. The verb base is ita. O is a past tense marker. It's used in many varieties of Nahuatl, and in some cases optionally, but in Orizaba Nahuatl it's required for all past tenses, preterite, imperfective, and past perfect. Ni is a subject pronoun prefix, meaning I. Kim is a third-person plural object pronoun prefix. In other words, it means them. The k marks the third person, while im marks the plural. K is a preterite marker. In other words, it marks the simple past tense. The plural form is different, and the preterite marker differs depending on the class of verbs. If the sentence contains explicit subjects or objects or additional information, it can have more words.
Ne o nikimita moapas mochan.
This means, I saw your parents at your home. Ne is a standalone subject pronoun meaning I, which is optional. The subject pronoun prefix ni is attached to the verb, so the standalone pronoun isn't required. When there are standalone subject and object pronouns, or explicit subjects and objects, modern varieties of Nahuatl tend to have SVO word order, subject, verb, object. This is partly due to the influence of Spanish, and is different from the SOV and VSO word orders which were common in classical Nahuatl. But modern varieties don't always use SVO, and there's flexibility in the word order. Next, moapas means your parents. Mo is the second person singular possessive prefix, in other words, your, and apas means parents, and comes from Spanish papas. Then there's mochan, which means your home or your residence. Again, mo is the possessive prefix. You can see the rest of the possessive prefixes on the chart here. As I mentioned before, this contains the preterite tense or simple past tense suffix k. This is suffixed to the verb's perfective base, or base 2. There are 3 different verb bases that are used depending on the tense, though in some cases they take the same form as each other, depending on the verb. If we wanted to use the imperfect tense, we would need to use the verb's imperfective base, or base 1. For this verb it's the same as base 2 from a moment ago. In Orizaba Nahuatl, the O prefix is used here as well, but a different suffix is used, ya. This also means I saw them, but is imperfective, meaning it was ongoing over a period of time. Without the prefix O and the suffix ya, this word would be in the present tense.
Nikimita.
I see them. The verb base for present tense is the same imperfective base, base 1. Then there's the future tense. The future tense uses base 3, which is used for future or hypothetical verb forms. But again, in some cases it's the same as one or both of the other bases. Let's look at a different sentence in the future tense.
Nikalakis ikal.
This means I will enter his house or her house. Again, we see the subject pronoun prefix, and here is the verb base, and here the suffix s is the future tense suffix.
Ikal.
Means his house or her house. Kal means house, and I is the third person singular possessive prefix. If you want to show possession with an explicit possessor, you keep the possessive prefix, but add the possessor before it.
Ikal.
Meaning his house becomes
Juan ikal.
meaning Juan's house.
Nikalakis Juan ikal.
I will enter Juan's house. When the subject is third person singular, there's no subject pronoun prefix.
Knekikochis.
He wants to sleep. Literally, he wants it, he will sleep. The verb base meaning want here is neki. So if there's no subject prefix, what's the k prefix here? That's the third person singular object prefix. This verb is transitive, so it needs an object prefix, even though the object comes right after it. The first verb here is in the present tense. The second verb is in the future tense. Again, there's no subject pronoun prefix. There's the verb base meaning to sleep, and the future suffix s. In the English sentence, there's an infinitive form, to sleep, but Nahuatl doesn't have an infinitive form. Imperatives. The imperative prefix she is used before the verb base.
Xitlacua.
Eat. The verb base is qua. So what's this? Tla. Tla is an unspecified object prefix, like things or something. This is a transitive verb, so it needs an object prefix of some sort. If there's no specific object, you can use an unspecified object prefix like this. Of course, there could be a different object prefix if it's referring to something specific.
Xiqua.
Eat it. This is the same prefix, she, with a third person singular object pronoun k after it. There's also an honorific suffix that can be used for the imperative forms.
Chitlacuactia. Chicuactia.
The plural imperative is made by adding the suffix ka.
Chitlacuaca.
Eat, or eat y'all. Note that y'all comes from you all and is not used in standard English, but is a way of using the second person plural in English.
Chicuaca.
Eat it, or eat it y'all. Object pronoun prefixes can also be added to imperatives.
Techpalvica.
Help us, or help us y'all. Tech is an object pronoun prefix meaning us. This imperative is negative.
Amo miak nakat chicuaca.
Don't eat a lot of meat. Word for word it's not much meat, eat it, plural imperative form. There are 2 negation markers used in Orizaba Nahuatl.
Amo.
This is used in non-declarative sentences. In other words, imperative or subjunctive sentences or questions.
Mach.
This is used in declarative sentences, like regular statements. For example,
Mash negnegen tlacuas.
I don't want to eat, or I don't want to eat anything. Word for word it's not, I want it, I will eat something. The use of these negation words differs from place to place, and in some places only amo is used. Adjectives. Most adjectives are derived from nouns or verbs through affixation, though others are standalone adjectives. For example, there's the noun
Tetl.
meaning stone. This word consists of the noun stem, te, plus the absolutive suffix, k. Then there's the adjective,
Tete.
meaning hard. This word consists of te plus the suffix tik. Tik is the most common adjective suffix, but there are others as well.
Istatl.
Means salt, and
Istat.
means white. K is another adjective suffix.
Omiki.
Is a verb meaning he died.
Miki.
Means dead. Ki is a past tense suffix, but when used at the end of an adjective, it's like a past participle. In other words, with a passive meaning. In a noun phrase, the adjective usually comes after the noun.
Tetl istat.
A white stone. But it can come before the noun for extra emphasis. The plural forms of adjectives usually have the suffix ke, which replaces ka or ki.
Teme istaque.
White stones. Here we see that the plural noun can take the plural suffix me, which is normally used for monosyllabic noun stems and those ending in a vowel. And there's another one, ti, used for other noun stems. The absolutive suffix is removed and me is added. Another example,
Sibatl.
meaning woman, becomes
Sibame.
meaning women. There are some other less common plural suffixes as well.
Choco.
Means teenager or young man. Its plural form is.
Chocoba.
Another case in which the absolutive suffix is dropped is when one noun connects to another one to form a compound noun. For example, we have the name of the language, náhuatl. There's also this word which means the náhuatl language.
Nahuatlactole.
It consists of the noun stem,
Nahua.
with the absolutive suffix removed, plus the word,
Tlactole.
which means language or word. The le at the end of the word is an absolutive suffix. So in a compound noun like this, there can be just one absolutive suffix at the end, after the final noun component. Another similar example.
Masehuale.
This means an indigenous person. Le is the absolutive suffix. We can remove it and make a compound noun.
Masehualtlactole.
This means indigenous language, but can be used to refer specifically to náhuatl. And we can remove the absolutive suffix from this word and make it part of a compound noun.
Tlactolcuepane.
This means translator. This word consists of
Tlactole.
meaning language or word, plus cuepa, meaning to turn or transfer, plus ni, which means he who does. In other words, the doer of an action. Because of extensive contact between Nahuatl and Spanish for several centuries, it's not surprising that there are lots of Spanish loanwords in Nahuatl. Here are a few basic examples.
Café.
Meaning coffee,
Caballo.
meaning horse. Another word for horse is,
Bestia.
which means beast in Spanish.
Panito.
Meaning tissue, from Spanish pañuelo.
Chinola.
This comes from señora and means miss or lady, but is often used in a disrespectful way to talk about less traditional women who live in the city. You may not be aware of it, but there are actually a number of words of Nahuatl origin that we commonly use in English. Some of them are coyote, from
Coyote.
avocado, from
Ibagatl.
cacao, from
Cacahuatl.
chili, from
Chile.
guacamole, from
Aguacamole.
tomato, from.
Tomate.
As you can see, Nahuatl is an incredibly interesting language. It's likely very different from your native language, but it's also very logical and straightforward. The trouble with learning it, as far as I can see, mainly comes down to which variety to learn, since classical Nahuatl is not spoken anymore, and there are many varieties of modern Nahuatl which have no real standardized form. And even when you choose a variety to learn, you may have trouble finding resources. I've met people who've learned Nahuatl to an advanced level, and they achieved that by living in a Nahuatl-speaking part of Mexico and learning the local variety. The question of the day. For speakers of Nahuatl, how well are you able to communicate with speakers of other varieties of Nahuatl? What factors does it depend on? And to other people, does Nahuatl have any features that are similar to ones in your language? What are they? If you liked this video and you're interested in Mexico, then check out my video about Mexico on my second channel, the GeoFocus channel. Click the link on screen or in the video description. And it's time to say thank you to the LangFocus Patreon supporters, especially the ones who appear on the screen. They are the top tier Patreon supporters, so many extra special thanks to them. Check out patreon.com/langfocus to see how you can become a patron. And to everyone, thank you for watching and have a nice day.